guys, it's Tori, and today I'm going to be doing the New York Times by the book tag. This tag was originally created by Mary Berg. I'm not completely sure. Her video is no longer up. However, it was recently rebooted by Ranier at Ranier Books, I think is how you pronounce both of those. Man, I really need to check on pronunciation before I start doing these videos. But anyway, I saw this on Hannah's Books and a couple months ago and really wanted to do it. But she didn't technically tag me. I will, however, still link her video down below, and it just looked like fun, so I decided to do it. Sort of in the comments, I mentioned that I thought it looked really fun, and she mentioned that I should do it, so I'm taking that as a tag from her, but technically she didn't, like, formally tag me. Anyway, not that that matters, let's just get into the questions. So the first question is, what book is on your nightstand right now? And currently, you are on top of the books on my nightstand, so I can't hold them up. But I currently have two physical books that are on my nightstand that I'm reading. One is Adam Bede by George Eliot, and I'm enjoying this a lot right now. I'm buddy reading this with Katja, Weinert. It's my first ever buddy read, so it's been really exciting. We haven't communicated a ton. We're only like 100 pages in. Not much has really happened, but I'm enjoying it okay. And I'm actually doing a vlog of my experience since it's my first George Eliot, so I will put that up in a couple weeks. But anyway, that's one. And then the other one is The Girl Who Drank the Moon by Kelly Barnhill. And I just started that last night, only like 40 pages into it, but it's cute so far. There's a little bit about it that I don't love, so we'll see how the rest goes. But it's definitely enjoyable. Like, I don't think it would get less than 3 stars at this point. I mean, again, only 40 pages in, who knows, but as of right now, I'd say it's not gonna get less than 3 stars, but I'm not quite sure where it's gonna end up falling, but it's fun. It's a good middle grade. Next question is, what was the last truly great book you read? So I have 2 answers for this. One is the last book I read that I absolutely loved, which was Wars of the Roses, Margaret of Anjou by Con Eagleton. This is the second book in the Wars of the Roses series, and I've liked it a lot more than the first one. Even though I really enjoyed the first one, I definitely ended up really loving this. Gave it 5 stars on Goodreads. I think technically it's more like a 4.5 star book, but I did really enjoy it. However, I don't know if I would say that's like a great book of all time or anything, so I'm going to say the last book that I read that I really feel like is a great book is probably The Five by Hallie Rubenhold, which was the last book I read last year and really enjoyed. I guess I could also say Much Ado About Nothing by William Shakespeare, which I recently read, but I read it over like only 2 days, so I keep forgetting I read it, but I really liked that one. So I don't know, any of those 3. Number 3 is, if you could meet any writer, dead or alive, who would it be and what would you want to know? So for this, I'm going to go with Anne Bronte. Now, some of you may be wondering, Tori, why don't you say Thomas Hardy? And to be honest, I don't think I would get along with Thomas Hardy as a person. I don't know a ton about him, but what I do know, I just don't know if we'd get along. Like, I think similar types of stories drew us in, but for different reasons, if that makes sense. So I love his stories for different reasons than I think he wrote them, if that makes sense. And I could be totally wrong about that, but that's just kind of the feeling I get. And yeah, so I wouldn't really want to meet Thomas Hardy in person because I don't think we'd get along. But Anne Bronte, I think I would get along with her, and I would be very curious to find out just what her thoughts were behind her books, how she approached the subject matter, what parts of herself and her life really inspired those books, how much they inspired them. I'd really just love to know, because I've mentioned before, when I read her books, they feel so raw and they feel like she put in so much of herself in those books, and I would like to know if I'm correct about that, if it is fair of me to put herself in those books as much as I do, or if maybe I need to pull back on that a little bit. And yeah, but anyway, so I'd really like to get to know her personally and see how much of herself really is in those books that she wrote. Question 4, what books might we be surprised to find on your bookshelves? I don't know what you might be surprised to find on my bookshelves. I guess I could say I have a book called, I think it's called The Making of Modern Drama, and I don't know who it's by, but I like never come on here and talk about modern drama that I read. In fact, I really don't read very much, but I'd like to read more, and that book I kind of want as a guide for certain people I should read. I have read a little bit of Ibsen, but that's about it. But I have that because I'm curious about it, but because I don't talk about it on here, you may be surprised to see that. I can't really think of any others that would be surprising necessarily, but I don't know, maybe if any of you one day when all this is over ends up coming to my house and seeing my bookshelves, you may point out one that you're surprised I have, but that's the best I can do for now. Okay, question 5. How do you organize your personal library? So my library is organized by age range and author name. So I have done, well, slightly. Okay, so my contemporary written books are organized that way. So I have an adult section and they're pretty much organized by author's name. The way my shelves are set up, they're not like normal shelves. They're a little bit more like Tetris-y. So I have to kind of play with that a little bit, but a lot of them are by author's name as much as I can, and then I have middle grade, a short middle grade section, although I have another separate shelf that has more of my middle grade, and then I have YA that's organized pretty much by author's name. But then I have my classics section, which are organized by time period actually. So I have them separated out into pre-Victorian, Victorian, and post-Victorian. And then originally I actually went online when I was organizing my bookshelves and organized them by date of when they were written, and that was silly of me because I can never remember when they were first published, and often on the inside of the book it doesn't necessarily say when they were very first published, so I have to look online. So they're kind of just a mess right now, but they're still like pre-Victorian, Victorian, and post-Victorian. So I at least have that, and then I kind of gauge based on what I remember. Like I think this is early Victorian, and then this one's later Victorian, so I kind of try to do that, but right now they're kind of a mess. I should probably reorganize them, to be honest. But then I have my TBR shelf, which are organized just by author's name, and then within authors I have them by title, like the library basically, and I have that separated into contemporary written books and classics as well. So anyway, kind of all over the place, but I know where everything is, so that's what really matters. Okay, question 6. What book have you always meant to read and haven't gotten around to yet? Anything you feel embarrassed never to have read? One, probably number 1 on this list, is North and South by Elizabeth Gaskell, which I'm getting into Gaskell, so I don't feel as horrible about it as I used to, just because I at least have started on Gaskell's works, but I feel really silly still not having read it North and South, but I plan to in August. Actually, I'm going to buddy read it with Connor Stompanato, and I'm really excited. And the other one I want to mention is a lot of Charles Dickens works, specifically Great Expectations, but also like David Copperfield's and A Tale of Two Cities. I feel like those 3 are kind of the ones I hear about most, both on BookTube and off BookTube. A lot of the other ones I hear about maybe a lot on BookTube, but not out in my IRL. But yeah, I just really have not read very much Dickens, and it makes me ashamed of myself a little bit. I've read A Christmas Carol and Oliver Twist, and that's it, which I feel like I need to read so much more of him. Luckily, again, I have a buddy read set up with Anne. I don't know how to pronounce her last name, I'm sorry. She's a wonderful commenter, and we've connected, and we plan to buddy read Great Expectations, I want to say in May, so that will be really good. We'll continue with that, and then I'm thinking I might choose David Copperfield as my audiobook for Victober this year, so we'll see how that goes. But yeah, definitely need to get to those, and thankfully, like I just mentioned, I have plans to this year, so hopefully we'll fix that very soon. Okay, question 7. Disappointing, overrated, just not good. What book did you feel you were supposed to like but didn't? Do you remember the last book you put down without finishing? So in answer to the first question, I feel like I go to this book all the time, but this is one I genuinely feel like I should have liked, which is why I'm making plans to reread it this year to give it one more chance, because I feel like I should be part of the crowd that likes it, and I'm just not, and that's The Great Gatsby by F. Scott Fitzgerald. Again, I've mentioned this several times, but I didn't like this book, and I didn't really like the movie, and I liked the way the movie looked, but the story just does not get me. And so I want to give it one more try because it's one that I genuinely feel like I should like. Like, it feels like a book that I should enjoy, but I just don't. So we're going to try it one more time. If I still don't like it, we're just gonna move on with my life and accept that The Great Gatsby is not for me. And then the second question, what book did you put down without finishing, was Leonardo da Vinci by Walter Isaacson. I was listening to this on audiobook like almost a year ago now, I guess. Oh gosh. I guess not quite a year ago, but kind of close. I think I was listening to it back in like April of last year, so almost a year ago. And unfortunately, I just got a little bored with it. I also needed to start listening to The Count of Monte Cristo because that was part of my goal for last year, and I wanted to make sure I was able to do that. And this one just wasn't what I was hoping it would be. It talked a lot about the art techniques used by Da Vinci, and I more went into it wanting to learn about Da Vinci as a person and how his person and his life inspired his paintings and how they work together, but I didn't necessarily want all the techniques and stuff. And unfortunately, a lot of this was focused on that. There was some things in it that I was enjoying, but there were some things in it that I was enjoying. Sorry about my terrible grammar, wow. But overall, I just found myself getting bored. I would like to come back to it at some future day, I guess, but we will see. I'm not super drawn to pick it back up, so we will see if that ever ends up happening. Question 8, what kind of stories are you drawn to? Any you stay clear of? So for stories I'm drawn to, I really like stories that focus on familial relationships, specifically between two people. However, there can be like multiple people in the relationship discussed. So I really like books that discuss parent-child relationships, sibling relationships. I love that a lot. And I really like romances that play with familial relationships as well. So I find this most in classics. I think there are probably some other romances that play with it, but I prefer romances to have a familial aspect to them. I really like that in general, not just in romances, but in romances, I like romances better when that's in there. And then I also really like stories that are historical fiction, that take an actual historical figure and do kind of a character study of them from the perspective of that time period in a fictional sense. Just because I feel like it's a great way to almost do a biography without necessarily being a biography. So obviously it's historical fiction, so you can never take anything that's in it as like solid fact. However, I do feel like it helps you get a better idea of the timeline of certain things. I feel like it can be a great introduction, and I just think it's interesting, and often more interesting than reading a biography. I think, for me at least, I find it easier to start off with a fictional retelling of someone or an event and then go into some of the nonfiction, because I feel like I at least have some background. Like currently I'm listening to a biography of Thomas Cromwell, and there's a lot of information. I'm probably missing so much. I'm listening to it on audiobook, and there's a lot that I'm like, I know I'm not gonna remember this. There's so many names, so many titles. It's really hard, but I'm able to follow it at least to some extent and understand at least some of the characters because of fictional movies and books that I've read or seen that talk about these characters. So I feel like there's something very beneficial about it, and it's just really entertaining. So as far as any I stay clear of, I had a thought for this the other day when I was thinking about this tag, but now I can't seem to remember what it was. Okay, I don't think this is what I thought of the other day, but I have two answers for this. One is just like really smutty romance. I just am not drawn to that. I just really don't find a lot of joy in reading those things. And honestly, romance in general, I'm more likely to read it like once a year if it's like a full-on romance without much else to back it up. I tend to not read those very much at all, maybe, like I said, once a year. But, I mean, they're fine. No judgment to people who like them. It's just not for me. The other one that I usually don't find myself drawn to are books that kind of have a vague synopsis where they just sound very literary. I don't know if that makes any sense, but there are some books that I hear people talk about on BookTube, especially this side of BookTube where there's more historical fiction, literary fiction, classics, and stuff like that being read. Sometimes there are descriptions of books that just sound very like melodramatic and like deep character studies of just people. And for whatever reason, it just sounds like too much for me. Like, I enjoy thinking about books. In fact, I recently learned in the self-aware reader tag when I was doing that I am very much a mind reader, a person who reads for the sake of like the accomplishment and really liking to think and analyze books. So you would think I might be more interested in those types of like literary sounding books, but for whatever reason they just don't. I don't find myself drawn to them. They kind of end up fading into the background of my mind and I kind of forget about them. So anyway, that's my answer for that. Question 9, if you could require the president to read one book, what would it be? Now, I'm not going to specify a certain president because I honestly think this book I would ask almost any politician to read, just because I feel like it has very good, important things that our country needs right now in general. And I don't think the current president, as of the 14th of January, really has the skills that I feel like this book encourages, and I honestly don't really think our new president has it very much either, unfortunately. I do prefer Biden over Trump as far as our figurehead and as far as a person goes, for sure, but I think this particular skill is something that's very much missing in general from leadership in America. But the book is Howard's End by M. Forster, and the reason I think this book would be great for anyone to read, especially nowadays, is that it really teaches and focuses on the idea of appreciating the opinions and experiences of others and being willing to listen even if you don't agree, and being able to appreciate another point of view even if you don't agree with that point of view. And I feel like that's just very missing from what we're doing as a nation right now, and especially in politics, and that's something that just makes me really sad. So I feel like this book, regardless of who was president, would be very beneficial in encouraging that kind of recognizing that everybody has a valid opinion and a valid experience, and we should be willing to listen to each other, even if we don't agree with each other. We need to be willing to listen, genuinely listen, to understand, not to debate, if that makes sense. I really feel like this book shows that very well. Other people, the thing about this book though, is other people may disagree with my interpretation of it, so maybe it wouldn't work great for the president, but for me, if they read it like I read it, then I feel like it would be good. So yeah. Man, I know in my favorites video, Howard's End was just a honorable mention, but I feel like I've talked so much about it that maybe it is a favorite book. I don't know. I need to reread it, apparently, because I feel like I liked it a lot more than I think I did. So anyway. Question 10, what do you plan to read next? So this all depends on when I finish The Girl Who Drank the Moon, but I'm planning on finishing it close to the time the winter book hibernation readathon starts, which is being hosted by Tom from Tom Reads Things and Simon from Savage Reads, excuse me, and I will link their announcement videos down below. But for that, they had several prompts, and I have 2 books that I really want to get to during that. I think it's 10-day readathon. I could get to more than this, but I definitely want to get to these 2, so one of these 2 will be the next one I read. So the first one is Bellman in Black by Diane Sutterfield, which is the group read for this readathon, and it covers all of the main prompts just in and of itself. So definitely will work for all the prompts and will help me get through all the prompts automatically. So I kind of think I might start with this one just because it will cover all the prompts. However, the other one I have I'm really excited to get to too, so we'll see. And it's also not very long, so I might go to this one next, but that is Their Eyes Were Watching God by Zora Neale Hurston. One of the prompts is to read a book with icy blue on the cover, and this has a lot of different shades of blue, so I feel like that will work. And they also really wanted to encourage us to read more diversely for this readathon, so I figured this would be great. Plus, I believe it's her 130th birthday this year, so kind of worked out very well. Yeah, hopefully I'll be able to read this. I don't know much about it beyond that it follows a woman who has multiple romantic entanglements, and we kind of follow her through that. A black woman specifically. Okay, and the last is of course to tag people, but I'm never very good at knowing who to tag for these. So I'm just going to say, if you want to do this, feel free. It's a really fun tag, definitely fun to do if you don't know what to do for a certain week of filming and you just want to do something quick. This one's definitely got some good questions that are easy to off the cuff answer. But anyway, I hope you are having a wonderful week, and thank you so much for watching. Let me know down below some of the answers you would give to these questions, as well as if you've read any of the books that I mentioned in this video, as I would love to know, and I will talk to you next time. Bye!